The year was 1925, and I, André Poisson, was a man of some standing in the Paris scrap metal trade. My life was predictable until a discreet telegram arrived, a summons to a secret government meeting. My mind raced with the possibilities. At the hotel, I was ushered into a private room. A man introduced himself as Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He was impeccable, a picture of quiet authority. In hushed tones, he explained the problem. The Eiffel Tower was to be dismantled. It was a national secret to avoid public outcry, and he was charged with discreetly selling it for scrap. The idea was preposterous, and yet the gravity in his voice and the air of secrecy lent it a terrifying sense of legitimacy. He even arranged a private tour of the tower, and as I walked beneath that colossal iron structure, I saw not a national landmark, but millions of tons of steel, the biggest deal of my life. I had to have it. The other dealers seemed hesitant, but I saw only the opportunity. The deputy director pulled me aside, feigning concern. He implied that a discreet arrangement was necessary to ensure the deal went to someone with the right financial standing. I, believing I was outsmarting my rivals, paid him a substantial bribe to secure the contract. I left that meeting a triumphant man, already envisioning a new legacy for my company. But as days turned into a week, the silence grew. My calls went unanswered. The address was a sham. A cold, sickening dread began to set in, followed by the crushing realization that I had been played. I had been duped. How could I, a man of my standing, confess that I had paid a man to sell me a national landmark? The shame was a physical weight, too great to ever report. The Eiffel Tower still stands, a monument to a brilliant con, and a silent testament to my own monumental foolishness. The telegram arrived a month after the buzz about Poisson's retreat from the city. The summons was identical, the air of secrecy just as thick. As a prominent scrap metal dealer, I found myself in the same opulent hotel room, facing the same charming man. He introduced himself as the Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He was too smooth, too polished. Something felt off. He began his practiced routine, lamenting the high cost of the Eiffel Tower's maintenance and the government's secret decision to sell it for scrap. He spoke in hushed tones, insisting on discretion to avoid a public outcry. I feigned interest, but a little voice in the back of my head screamed in suspicion. Hadn't the press reported nothing of this? Hadn't the first meeting with this exact same group of dealers produced no public results? The final straw was the private tour. As he spoke, with a grand gesture toward the immense structure, I remembered a conversation with my associate, a good man named Lucien. He was a close friend of André Poisson's, and he had told me about Poisson's sudden and bizarre disappearance for a week a month ago. He had heard rumors that Poisson had gone on a business trip that had gone sour, a secret deal that had cost him a fortune. It was all a little too coincidental. I played along, keeping my skepticism hidden behind a mask of enthusiasm. When he pulled me aside for a private chat, using the same flattery and implied promise of exclusivity he had used on Poisson, I knew for certain. He was a con man. He asked for a bribe to seal the deal, a sign of my seriousness. Instead of a check, I simply smiled and nodded, excusing myself to the washroom. Once out of sight, I found a telephone and placed a call to the police, giving them a detailed description of the man and the scam. I watched from a distance as a police officer arrived and approached the hotel room. The man, seeing the officer, calmly gathered his things and slipped out a back entrance, disappearing into the Parisian crowd without a trace. He never returned to Paris, but the story of the man who tried to sell the Eiffel Tower twice became a legend in my circle. The first Mark's story was a tragedy of greed. Mine was a silent victory, a testament to trusting my instincts. And the best part? I didn't have to pay a franc to prove it. Paris in the 1920s was a city of monuments and of fools. I, Victor Lustig, saw both as opportunities. I had just finished my breakfast and was reading the paper. The government was complaining about the astronomical cost of maintaining the Eiffel Tower. They were debating whether to tear it down. It was then that the idea, in all its brazen glory, hit me. Not a con, but an art form. My first task was to create a persona. I was no common swindler. I became a government official, the Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. I had the tailored suits, the polished shoes, and the quiet, almost weary air of a man burdened with great responsibility. My next step was to select my audience, not the general public, but 6 of Paris's most prominent scrap metal dealers. Men of immense wealth, yet with a hunger for more. I sent them a discreet telegram, summoning them to a highly confidential meeting. I laid out the story with grave seriousness. The government, in its infinite wisdom, had decided the tower was an eyesore, a blight on a modern Paris. It was to be dismantled. And I, with great reluctance, was in charge of selling it. I made them feel like they were part of a great secret, a patriotic act. I even arranged a private tour of the monument. As I watched them, their eyes, once filled with awe, now saw only the colossal weight of metal. I had transformed a symbol of France into scrap. It was a beautiful thing to witness. I had my target, a man named André Poisson. He was a good, honest man, and that made him the perfect mark. He was insecure about his position, hungry to prove himself to the high society dealers around him. I played on that fear, subtly suggesting that he might not be financially robust enough for the deal. This, of course, made him more desperate. He offered me a bribe, a hefty sum to secure the contract. I accepted with the somber air of a man doing his civic duty. A month later, with my pockets full, I left Paris. The first con was so easy, so elegant, that it was a crime not to try it again. I returned to Paris a month later and, using the exact same script, summoned another group of dealers. But this time, my instincts warned me. My new mark, a different man, was too quiet, too observant. His eyes followed my every move. He did not have the easy, desperate eagerness of Monsieur Poisson. He simply smiled and excused himself, promising to return with the money. I knew he was going to the police. I didn't panic. Panic is for amateurs. I simply collected my briefcase, hailed a taxi, and left. The police arrived, and a few moments later, so did my mark. But by then I was already gone, disappearing into the city's heart, ready to find my next monument, my next fool. The genius of it wasn't in the sale of a fake monument, but in the effortless, beautiful destruction of a man's pride.